Welcome to the Fear and Greed Business News Afternoon Report for Tuesday, the 2nd of July, 2024. I'm Sean Aylmer. Every afternoon, we've got the 5 stories that happened today that you need to know about. Story number 1, the S&P ASX 200 closed down 0.4% today to 7,718 points. It would have been much worse, but for a strong session among the energy stocks, thanks to rising prices. In fact, the energy index was the only one of the 11 sub-indices on the ASX 200 to close higher. Worst on the day was the property index. All the big miners and banks were lower. Among the large caps, Goodman Group closed down 2%, while National Australia Bank and Wesfarmers were both off more than 1%. Worst of the top 200 was retailer Lovisa Holdings. It dropped nearly 4%. Again, it was the coal companies doing best, with Whitehaven and Coronado among the best performers. Best of the large caps was Woodside Energy, up more than 3%. Best on the day was lithium developer Liontown Resources, finishing up nearly 8% after it secured a $250 million funding deal. Story number 2 in corporate news. Bendigo and Adelaide Bank fell 1% after Chief Executive Marnie Baker, a good friend of Fear and Greed's, announced she's stepping down after 35 years with the bank. Ramelius Resources has upped its stake in fellow ASX gold miner Spartan Resources to nearly 18%. Shares in drug maker Mayne Pharma fell 5% after it decided to pay disgruntled investors $38 million to settle a court fight over alleged misleading or deceptive conduct and breaches of continuous disclosure obligations in respect of alleged anti-competitive conduct in the US. Telco Superloop is expected to hit the top end of its full-year earnings guidance, pushing its share price up more than 1%. Financial services software company Iris said it found no evidence of unauthorised access to its production environment, software or client data following a review of a data breach earlier this year. And finally, Origin Energy has acquired 20% of Australian decarbonisation startup Climate Tech Zero, which works with industrial companies on cutting emissions and energy costs. Story number 3, Labor's caucus has backed Prime Minister Anthony Albanese's decision to suspend Western Australian Senator Fatima Payman. The outspoken senator who voted with the Greens on a pro-Palestinian vote last week was suspended from caucus. This morning, caucus endorsed the position that by her own actions and statements, Senator Payman placed herself outside the privilege that comes with participating in the federal Parliamentary Labor Party caucus. Mr Albanese said he was only the Prime Minister because he had Labor next to his name, and that's true for everyone in the party. The Prime Minister also hit back at criticism he didn't move fast enough, saying that showing restraint and some compassion in the case was a strength, not a weakness. Senator Payman has claimed she was exiled and intimidated by colleagues and will abstain for all votes as she reflects on her future. Story number 5, wholesale power prices are set to jump by 50% in coming years as the building of clean energy generation and transmission remains sluggish. According to investment bank UBS, prices will peak in 2029 at $104 per megawatt, 50% higher than last year's prices. That means unless the government steps in to give tens of billions of dollars of energy rebates, which is unlikely, then consumers are going to have to pay much more for power. Power prices fell last year amid Goldilocks conditions, according to UBS, with plenty of coal-fired power generation, milder weather, and more renewable generation. But this is unlikely to be repeated. Delays in projects, including Snowy 2.0 and the Central West Orana Renewable Energy Zone in New South Wales, that's both generation and transmission, will help drive prices higher. And finally, story number 5, Hurricane Beryl is delivering catastrophic winds and intense rainfall, along with a life-threatening storm surge across the Windward Islands in the Caribbean, with the storm gathering ferocity. It's very possibly a Category 5 storm by now. This morning, it made landfall on Grenada with wind speeds of up to 240 kilometres an hour. It's the strongest hurricane to pass through the region since records began in 1851. While it isn't expected to hit US oil operations, it did push up Brent prices, and there's a chance of disruption later this week. More broadly, such as a severe storm this early in the season doesn't augur well for coming months. That's it for the afternoon report for Tuesday, the 2nd of July, 2024. Don't forget to hit follow on the podcast and find Fear and Greed on LinkedIn, Instagram, X, TikTok and Facebook. Join Michael Thompson and I tomorrow morning for the Fast 5 by Fear and Greed, the top 5 business stories you need to know in just 5 minutes. I'm Sean Aylmer. Enjoy your evening.